Hi and welcome. This week I'm reviewing the Chinese-made Perla Barb chainsaw. Now, last year I had a tree fall down on my block, this particular tree we have in front of us here, and I got a couple of quotes to have it removed, and those quotes came in at over $1,000 Australian. So I thought rather than pay someone to cut up this tree, I would actually look into buying a chainsaw. Now, I've got a smaller still saw, but it really isn't up to a task like this. I really did need a bigger saw. So I started looking at saws of around 70cc's, which this is one of. This is actually a copy of a Husqvarna saw, I believe. And it's even got a crown on the top here, which is identical to the Husqvarna crown, except it's got an E in it instead of an H. So that's a bit of a giveaway that perhaps some of these parts may have been made as pattern parts for Husqvarna saws. So I had a look on eBay and did a bit of research into these cheaper Chinese-made saws. This particular one cost me around $350 Australian. It is slightly more expensive than some of the other brands that are on eBay, but I was quite impressed with it for two reasons. First of all, the distributor of the saw, Jono and Johno, offer a complete range of spare parts for this particular saw and for the others in this particular model range. So there was going to be no issue down the track if I had any issues of getting parts for it. The other thing that I found quite confidence inspiring is that they supplied it with their own brand of bar and chain. They distribute these chains and bars for a wide range of chainsaw models and types, and they seem to also get good reviews on the web. The bar is actually a sprocket tip bar with a needle roller on the sprocket. And the chain is supposedly, according to their advertising, made in China from German steel. So, you know, that sounded quite good in my book. Now, I've only owned the saw for a couple of weeks, and I've used it for a number of small jobs just to run the saw in. Now, the saw does have a few idiosyncratic ways in starting, I've found. The starting procedure is quite straightforward. You put the kill switch to the on position, you pull out the choke, which also sets the fast idle. You push in the decompressor button up here on the cylinder head, and then you pull the saw about 5 or 6 times until the saw just kicks over. It won't actually start with the choke on, it'll just kick over and stop. At that point, you push the choke lever in, and then you pull the cord again, and the saw should start. Now, it certainly had started quite easily for me a number of times, but I did have a couple of occasions where the saw was flooded and I had to remove the plug to actually get the saw to start. Hot starting is a lot easier. You put the kill switch to the on position, push in the decompressor, and pull out the choke lever and then push the choke in so that you've just set the fast idle. And then you can start the saw. The safest way to start the saw is obviously with the chain brake on as well. I'll give a bit of a demonstration of the starting of the saw a little bit later. Now, the saw does appear to be quite well made from a physical point of view. I do like the fact that, like a lot of late model saws, it actually has a proper paper element air cleaner here under this quick removable cap. So for servicing the air cleaner, it certainly looks quite straightforward. I've only had a couple of little minor quibbles with the saw, apart from a couple of starting issues that I had when I first got it. And really the major problem that this saw has in common with a lot of Chinese-made saws is that the oil lube for the chain does have a tendency to seep out of the saw when it's in storage. And this seems to be a common problem with a lot of Chinese-made chainsaws. So it's not really a great idea to leave the chainsaw in storage with bar lube in it, because it will have a tendency to weep out. I also found that the fuel cap was actually rather difficult to refit. It had a tendency to want to cross thread, so you have to be careful with the fuel cap. And I did also notice that the fuel cap does have a tendency on my particular saw to weep a little bit of fuel. But then again, it's not a good idea to leave fuel in your saw for storage, because with modern fuels, with their high ethanol content, you are likely to clog up the fuel lines with a jellied fuel if you leave it in there for 6 months or so. Well, I think that's about all I've got to say about the saw. I'll give a little bit of a demonstration by doing a couple of cuts on this tree here so you can get an idea of the power of this saw. Certainly I've been impressed with it so far, and you know, if I have any major problems with the saw, maybe I'll do a follow-up story in a year's time. So let's first of all start the saw and then get on with the demonstration. Okay, so first we'll put the chain brake on, push in the decompressor button, turn the ignition on, pull out the choke, put our foot in it, now just push that decompressor back in, turn the choke off. Well, that's it for the demonstration. I hope I didn't look like too much of an idiot on that particular video. I'm not a really seasoned chainsaw user, I just try to keep myself safe. I did mention earlier that the chainsaw does come with a fairly basic toolkit with a universal tool for adjusting the bar length and removing the plug, a small screwdriver for adjusting the idle and idle mixtures, and also a couple of Allen keys if you need to disassemble the saw for whatever reason. Well, I think that's about it for this particular video, and I'll catch you next time.